All right, today we are going to talk about CPCTC. We touched on this at the beginning of the chapter, right? And I said we would come back to this. Does anybody remember what CPCTC stands for?
A whole bunch of stuff I don't understand.
So CPCTC stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, so what that means is that if I know two triangles are congruent, I know all three pairs of angles are congruent and all three pairs of sides. Right? So we're going to use CPCTC when we're asked to prove that parts, okay, meaning angles or sides, are congruent. Okay, so if I'm asked to prove that a pair of sides or a pair of angles in two triangles are congruent, then I'm going to use this CPCTC idea. But first, what we have to do is prove that the triangles are congruent. Okay, so this is just going to kind of be like an extra little step. We're still going to have to prove that the triangles are congruent. But then we're going to go one step further and say, well, if I know the triangles are congruent, then I can say this pair of angles is congruent, or this pair of sides is congruent. Right? So let's go through an example here. On this first one, I am given two pairs of congruent sides. Okay, I'm given AB and AD are congruent. So let's mark that, AB and AD. And we're also just given that BC and CD are congruent. So we can mark that. So now I've used my givens. Now I need to look at the diagram. Is there anything else we know for sure in the diagram?
Sure.
It's sure a line, right? So I can say that that third side is congruent to itself. So AC is congruent to AC. What would my reason be? Reflexive property. So now, if I look at my picture, can I say the triangles are congruent? By side, right? So I can say I got all three pairs of sides, so we can claim that the triangles are congruent. So I can say a triangle ABC is congruent to triangle ABC by side. Okay? But now look at what we are asked to prove. Okay? We are asked to prove that a pair of angles is congruent. I've already proven that the two triangles are congruent. So now I know that every pair of corresponding angles has to be congruent. Okay? Even though we haven't said anything about angles yet, once I've shown the two triangles are congruent, then I can claim any pair of corresponding pieces are congruent. So I can say angle BCA is congruent to angle DCA because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, so we're just kind of adding one step onto what we've been doing. Okay, we still have to prove that the triangles are congruent, bless you. But then we can say a pair of corresponding pieces are congruent because CPC-TC, because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay? Questions? Okay?
All right, so now we're using other proofs to solve proofs, correct?
Kind of.
All right. I think I might.
Okay.
I also might lose.
So I mean, it's just like one more step for what we've been doing. Okay, we've been proving triangles are congruent. So we've done this. Now we're just adding one step and saying, well, now I can show that any pair of sides or pair of angles are congruent if I know the triangles are congruent. Okay. Let's do one more together, and then let's try some here. Okay, so on number 2, we want to ultimately show that sides PQ and RS are congruent. But to do that, what we're going to do is first prove that these triangles are congruent. Okay, so I'm given a pair of parallel sides and a pair of congruent angles. Okay, so I'm going to write down the congruent angles first, but again, it doesn't matter what order we write the givens in. I'm going to start with this one because it just gives us a pair of congruent angles. So angle QPS would be this one, and angle SRQ is this one. So I know for sure that those two angles are congruent. Then we're given that PS and QR are parallel. So mark that on the diagram. We use our arrows. Right? So if I know that I have parallel lines, what can I do then?
Really like bring the lines out, right?
Yeah, so we talked about extending the lines out. And then in a picture like this, we'll end up with alternate interior angles. You did. Same thing you did last time, you know? Okay, so what two angles could I say are congruent because they're alternate interior?
PSQ and RQ. Yeah.
Perfect, yep. Angle PSQ and RQS, yep. So I guess I need to put 2 lines in there. So angle PSQ is congruent to angle RQS. And that is because they are alternate interior. So what else can I say here? I've got 2 pairs of angles.
QS are reflective.
Exactly. They share side QS. So I can say QS is congruent to QS by the reflexive property. So now, if I look at my picture that I've marked up, I've got 2 angles and a side not in between them. I can now say that these triangles are congruent by angle, side. Okay? Now, when we're writing our statement, we do have to make sure that we're correctly matching up corresponding pieces. Okay? Before, we were just writing down whatever they asked us to prove. Right? They gave us a correct congruent statement. But now on this step, they don't give us one. We have to be sure that we're matching up correct corresponding pieces. Okay, so I could say triangle PSQ is congruent to triangle, let's see, so P would match up with R, then Q would match up with S, and S with Q, so I could say PSQ is congruent to RQS. And we said that was going to be by angle, side. And remember, the difference between angle, side and angle, side, angle Okay, angle side is when I have two angles and a side not in between them. Angle side angle would be two angles and a side that is in between. Okay? So now, the final step, once I've shown that the triangles are congruent, then I can claim this pair of corresponding sides is congruent. Because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Questions? All right, we've got 19 minutes. All right, we're just going to do the three proofs that are on the back. That's going to be it. Okay, there's not going to be any other homework. That's going to be all that we're going to have to do here. So we do need to be working on that for these 19 minutes. I'll be around to help. Ms. Graham will be around to help. Ask each other questions. So.
You said if they don't say it's parallel, then it can't be parallel.
Right, we have to be given that. So no, we're not going to do an inelastic this week. Figured people would be winding